From the beautiful city of Los Angeles, California, we bring you the Gimme 3 podcast. Hello and welcome, cinephiles, cinema lovers, movie appreciators, to the Gimme 3 podcast, a series for cinephiles. This is a show where we pick 3 films connected by one theme. I'm Nicholas Ibarra. I'm joined as always by my fabulous co-host, Bella F. Stratus. Bella, we are celebrating today.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Today is our 50th episode. Can you believe that?
I actually cannot believe it. It is so crazy to say out loud.
Episode 50. And how do you feel? We're 50 episodes deep. That just shows our dedication to this podcast and our dedication to y'all, the fans, our listeners, but also, appreciation that our listeners have kept us going so far, 50 episodes deep. How are you feeling?
Exactly. Yes. No, so grateful, so proud and just happy. And yeah, it's been amazing. And I'm so excited to keep going.
Well, we had to come up with a great theme for episode 50. And we thought, why don't we celebrate films that are turning 50 years old themselves? Films that were released in 1974 are celebrating their 50th anniversary. And it just so happens that 1974 was an incredibly seminal year for cinema. So many goddamn great films, including a few that we've already talked about on the show. So, including my favorite of the year, A Woman Under the Influence. We discussed that in our Great Mothers series. Also in our Great Mothers series, we discussed Claudine. So if you're looking for Claudine, which is a great 1974 release, seek that in one of our previous episodes. And then, of course, Godfather 2 also came out in 1974, but we are going to be discussing the entire Godfather trilogy later this month. So 1974, a heavy year for film, but we were trying to decide. I mean, this is like a year where that renegade counterculture style and themes of New Hollywood were, they were still alive and well, but we're also starting to see kind of the reemergence of like big studio, old Hollywood, because they were starting to finally tackle some more impactful films and hire some new, fresh filmmakers. Let's see, Black cinema was making money at the box office with the talents of movie stars like Pam Grier, Diane Carroll, Isaac Hayes, James Earl Jones, all money makers at the box office. Black cinema, huge leaps and bounds in 1974. And we had young filmmakers starting to make their mark with some early work that would propel their careers. We had filmmakers like Martin Scorsese with Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Steven Spielberg, Brian De Palma, Jonathan Demme all had early career movies in 1974. So you're probably saying to yourself, Nick, Bella, how in the hell do you guys pick just 3 films from such a great year?
Right.
Well, it wasn't easy. We decided to go with 3 films that had a long-lasting impact and kind of changed their game in their own genres. So we've got the shape-shifting, broad and abrasive and boyish comedy Blazing Saddles. We've got the neo-noir classic, widely considered to be the greatest screenplay ever written. If you've taken a screenwriting class, you've probably read this screenplay, Chinatown. And finally, we've got the underground, genre-defying, and what became genre-defining horror film, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So quite the eclectic selection that we have here, Bella, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yes, definitely. All over the place, but all 3 bangers.
All 3 bangers. And we will try not to be all over the place here as we try and dive into these immense pieces of work. We got a little bit of something for everybody here on episode 50 of the Give Me 3 podcast. Here we go, Bella. Start us off.
All right. So introducing one of the greatest comedies from 1974, Mel Brooks' Blazing Saddles. This satirical Western black comedy stars Cleavon Little and Gene Wilder as Bart and Jim, two misfits on the American frontier of 1874. The two cross paths when Bart narrowly escapes execution to become sheriff of Rockridge in Attorney General Hedley Lamar's devious ploy to drive the townspeople out and clear the way for a new railroad. On his first day as sheriff, Bart seeks help from Jim the Waco Kid, a washed-up, notorious gunslinger addicted to the bottle, in hopes that Jim can help him win over the townspeople. The film also features Slim Pickens, Alex Karras, David Huddleston, three Brooks movie regulars as well, with Dom DeLuise, Harvey Korman, and Madeline Kahn, who received a Best Supporting Actress Oscar nomination for her performance as the hilarious, promiscuous stage performer, Lily von Stupp. Mel Brooks also appears in the film as the cracked-out Governor William J. LePetomane and the Yiddish-speaking Native American chief in a flashback from Bart's childhood. So the film was based on a story treatment by Andrew Bergman, who co-wrote the screenplay with Richard Pryor, Norman Steinberg, and Alan Uguer. And Bergman's first draft was actually originally called Tex X, a play on Malcolm X. Alan Arkin was set to direct, and our guy, James Earl Jones, was cast as the sheriff, which is pretty crazy. Eventually, that fell apart. And after that, Mel Brooks decided to buy the rights to the film, hired Bergman, hired the writing crew, and told them, please do not write a polite script. And I think it's safe to say that's exactly what they did. Today, the film is regarded as one of the greatest comedies of all time, with a passionate cult following. It was ranked number 6 on the American Film Institute's 100 Years, 100 Laughs list, which is pretty amazing to think about. Number 6.
Number 6.
That's crazy. Yeah. It received 3 Oscar noms, of course, one for Madeline Kahn and one for Best Film Editing, and of course, 3rd for its classic theme song. So I've mentioned before that Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein is a favorite in the Stratus family. We absolutely adore Gene Wilder, Madeline Kahn, Terry Garr, rest in peace, as of last month, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that movie is just one of the most quoted among us. We've got it memorized from beginning to end. So
that movie also came out in 1974, by the way.
Yeah, I can't believe that they came out the same year. It's so random. But so yeah, I was very excited to check out this other famous Mel Brooks joint that I had never seen. And my initial reaction, the first half of this movie, I was thinking, oh my God, what did I get myself into? This is not what I expected.
What did I get you into? Because I think I picked this one.
Maybe that's true. I'm like, oh God, what are we watching? And I was really nervous that I wasn't going to like it. But then the second half just completely blew me away. This movie is so funny in the weirdest ways. It has like just such an extreme range of comedy, jumping around from just the simple slapstick bits to like outrageous, irreverent satire. And it just has this relentless steamrolling energy that never once lets up. It is bold, but also very clever and cineliterate, if you will. It's both a love letter and a kick in the ass for the groundbreaking films and artists that came before it. And, I just think it's easy to see why people loved this movie then and still return to it now. But Nick, what do you think of Blazing Saddles?
This was a movie I watched a lot in my youth. I had not seen it in a really, really long time. I think the last time I had watched it was high school. Coming back to it, I was like, all right, I'm ready for the bold. I'm ready for the offensive. And then rewatching it, I'm like, this is a pretty wholesome movie, I mean, this is not that bad. There are some racist jokes here and there, but the racist jokes are for every race under the sun. So it's very egalitarian in that way.
No, totally. It's definitely it's not really raunchy. It's just
no, certainly not.
It's just bold. I feel like bold is perfect in terms of it covers everything.
The racism in this movie is not just there for the sake of racism. The racism in this movie is there to drive home the theme of how idiotic bigotry is and how simple-minded it is.
Exactly.
What did you expect? Welcome, Sonny. Make yourself at home. marry my daughter. You gotta remember that these are just simple farmers. These are people of the land. The common clay of the New West. You know. Morons.
The film ultimately is about how insane white people get when a black person is put into a position of power. And 50 years later, I'd say this film's themes hold up and packs just as much a punch as it did in 1974. And you have to remember, this movie was written, conceived within a decade of Malcolm X getting assassinated, Martin Luther King Jr. getting assassinated. I mean, in 1973, the year that they probably filmed this, you had Ray Robinson, a black activist, who was killed at the Wounded Knee protest. So black leaders were just getting murdered, assassinated here left and right. And what the filmmakers did here, this is the bold thing, was they said, hey, I'm going to make a film where the black man becomes the leader and leads white people to salvation. This is the antithesis, in fact, of the white savior movie. This is the black savior movie. And how do you Trojan horse that idea for a white audience in 1974? Through comedy.
Boy, is he strict.
Gotta get in there close and find out what's happening.
There's our ticket. Hey, boys! Look what I got here!
Hey, where are the white women at?
Yeah, I feel like comedy-wise, in terms of like the humor in this, it reminded me, I couldn't help but like think about Family Guy, which I've been watching recently, for better or worse.
It's got that boyish humor.
Yeah. I feel like so much of what Family Guy was inspired by Mel Brooks' style, and just, because like I said, it's got like the fart jokes, but then like all the edgier jokes, and then even just like random bits and references to pop culture and media, like, and it's all woven into this, like all these little skits are woven into one grand theme or like overarching story. And it's just so much fun to watch, honestly, especially as a whole movie.
That fart scene you mentioned, this was actually the big controversy of the movie when it came out. Was in 1974. This was the first time that a viewing audience was treated to flatulence on the big screen.
Really?
This film broke ground by breaking wind. The first farts in cinematic history are the scene where all of the bad guys are sitting around just eating beans, shoving their face full of beans, and they're just all farting their asses off. And Slim Pickens goes, he's like, God damn, I think you guys had enough beans. It's like, it's not that funny, but I don't know why it gets a laugh if you see it on the big screen, it gets a laugh every time that sequence.
So stupid. I love it. Wow, that is a great fun fact.
First flatulence.
Well, speaking of flatulence as well, I was looking up just like other fun facts about this, and speaking of Mel Brooks as the governor, William J. Lepedemain. Yeah. My favorite fun fact about this is that the name Lepedemain was taken from a famous French flatulist from the late 1800s. He was literally a professional fartist and entertainer.
Wow.
Yeah. Allegedly, he had remarkable control of his abdominal muscles, and he could literally fart on command by apparently inhaling or moving air into his butthole and then controlling the release of that air. And I just thought that was so fucking funny, because I love thinking about just how weak Mel Brooks must have been when he learned about this guy. And was like, yeah, we have to throw that in the film.
And knowing Brooks, probably envious. He's like, God damn, that's my calling. I got to make these goddamn movies because I can't suck air into my butthole.
Yeah, exactly. So good.
The other thing that I was able to appreciate on this rewatch, more than I was, say, when I was a kid, was just the style. You know, they owned the homage and the parody of these classic big budget westerns, and they committed fully, not just with like the costumes and whatnot, but
Yeah.
you know, the film stock. They shot it in Technicolor, the font style of that opening credit sequence, and just the structure of the film itself. You know, the bad hombres trying to take over a town, and then the white knight, or in this case, the black knight, comes in to save the town. You know,
Right.
you have to embrace the bones of what you're homaging. And Mel Brooks understood that. So did another film that we're going to discuss today. But yeah, I was really impressed with that. It's far more beautiful than I remember, probably because also last time I watched it was on VHS.
That'll do it. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I would also add, for me, like the heart of this film a little bit was just Cleavon Little and Gene Wilder. I love both. I loved watching both of them so much, and they just have this amazing magnetic chemistry on screen. Like, I don't know, for me, at least from the very beginning, I could like sense this immediate bond between them, and I just loved it so much. And it was also really funny to see like a softer, mellow side to Gene Wilder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for me, like Young Frankenstein, he's completely unhinged in that. Or even like Willy Wonka, he's equally unhinged and a bit terrifying in that as well. But Gene's Waco Kid persona is like, it's like he just smoked a bunch of blunts. Like, he's just so chill and relaxed. But then when he's needed, he like immediately jumps into action. It's the fastest gunslinger in the world. And those scenes killed me. The way they are shot is so funny. But yeah, I adore him. And I think as much as I adore him, I still think Cleavon Little really stole the show here. He's just so charming, so funny, electric performance. Just loved every minute of him on the screen.
And what's funny is that neither of those men were supposed to be in this movie. You had originally Richard Pryor, who came on as a writer for the film. According to Mel Brooks, you know, like Pryor actually really concentrated on the Mongo character. Like he Pryor loved Mongo. So it's like, oh, he wrote all the Mongo bits, like Mongo only pawn in Game of Life. That's Richard Pryor, you know. You could see his jokes and his sensibility throughout the film. Like that "Where the White Women At" line.
Yep.
That has got Richard Pryor written all over it. But
totally.
But yeah, Richard Pryor was originally supposed to play Sheriff Bart. But at the time, Richard Pryor had a history, you know, with the, drugs. So film insurance, you know, it was going to be costly to keep him on as the lead, according to the studio anyway. So they would not finance the film with Richard Pryor as the lead because it was too risky. So they ended up going with Cleavon Little, and he nailed it. But also, Gig Young was not only meant to play the Waco Kid role, he was cast, and they started filming with him. And in that first scene with the Waco Kid, where he is locked up in the jail cell, hanging upside down, Gig Young started projectile vomiting all this green gook. And
oh my God.
Mel Brooks was like, holy shit, this guy is committing, man. This guy is like committing to the role. He's playing the drunk perfectly. He's puking all over the place. Well, it turns out that Gig Young was indeed had a very intense alcoholism problem. And he was going through withdrawals because he like tried to clean himself up for the movie, and he was going through alcohol withdrawals. So
yeah, being hung upside down probably didn't feel too good.
Probably not. Yeah, probably not. So Mel Brooks, you know, is like shattered, and he's like, "Oh my God, what the hell am I going to do? My like second lead is I can't like film with this guy." He's calls his friend Gene Wilder, and he's, you know, crying to him, telling him, you know, I think the movie's done. And Gene Wilder said, "You know what? He was in New York. They're filming in Los Angeles." He said, "Let me catch a flight. I'll be on set tomorrow."
Wow.
And Gene showed up for the film, and the rest is history.
Wow. GOAT saved the film.
And then even funnier is that without this film is a chance Young Frankenstein wouldn't be what it was, because one day when they were having lunch in the rec center, Gene Wilder is over there working on something, writing on a legal pad. And Mel Brooks is like, hey, man, could I come hang out with you? Can I come sit with you? And Gene's like, yeah, go ahead. And Gene's not really paying attention to him. He just keeps writing. And Mel Brooks is like, all right, dude, come on. What are you working on over there? Spill the tea, you know?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm working on this project called Young Frankenstein. And I want you to be a part of it. And the rest is history. So,
oh my God, that's amazing.
This was kind of the catalyst for their next big great classic.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And it came out the same year. I can't wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Pretty massive productions. Yeah. I mean, I think they probably filmed this one in 1973 and it was released in 1974.
Yeah.
And then they filmed
probably
Young
started Frankenstein right after. Yeah. That makes sense. Wow, that's amazing. I love that.
Lots of great history with this film, and it really, I believe it stands the test of time. I know that everybody says like, "Oh, this movie could never be made today," and yeah, probably not. But
yeah,
I think the audience, the movie-going audience, still would and does appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
You're the testament to that, Bella. You are.
Yeah, I saw it for the first time yesterday.
You're a Gen Z.
Yeah.
Did you watch this with your boyfriend? Out of curiosity.
He watched parts of it. He really enjoyed the "I'm just a pawn in the game of life" quote. So good.
I think my favorite line is towards the end of the film, besides the "where the white women" line at, which
is just iconic.
Yeah, I have that tattooed on my. But it's when all the bad guys are gonna come into town and destroy everything, and the town's working on, rebuilding a fake version of the town, so that way they don't destroy the real town. And in order to delay them, Clevion Little and Gene Wilder's characters go and they're like, all right, we're going to delay them a little bit. And they add a toll booth and the mob comes up with Slim Pickens leading the charge. And he goes, shit, we need dimes. Somebody's got to go back and get a shitload of dimes.
Oh, I love that one. That killed me.
Someone go back and get a shitload of dimes. I love it.
It's so good. Oh man, yeah, there were so many good ones. I think if I had to choose, my favorite would be I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing her name wrong, but Madeline Kahn in this. I thought she's just so funny, and I loved her stage performance of the song "I'm So Tired." It's so amazing to watch because she's giving 100% for her character to give like 5% of her energy to the crowd.
Exactly, yeah.
Here I stand, the goddess of desire, set men on fire. I have this power. Morning, noon, and night, it's drink and dancing. Some quick romancing, and then a shower. Stage door Johnnies constantly surround me. They always hound me with one request. Who can satisfy their lustful habit? I'm not a rabbit. I need some rest. I'm tired, sick and tired of love. I've had my fill of love from below and above. Tired of being admired. Tired of love uninspired. Let's face it, I'm tired. I've been with thousands of men again and again. They promised the moon. They're always coming and going and going and coming.
I think what made me laugh the hardest was after her performance when she sends a note to invite Bart into her dressing room. And Jim is like, oh, what does it say? And Bart reads, I must see you alone in my dressing room. And then she has this another like amazing follow-up in the dressing room. She's like, a wed woes, how romantic. And it's so stupid, but that just got me so hard. I loved it.
Yeah, that musical sequence of her performing that song is so great. Yeah, that's probably what got her the Oscar nomination, because like you said, it's just she's doing the lazy, tired sequence so beautifully. It's so hilarious.
Oh, it's just mesmerizing to watch, honestly.
Blazing Saddles, it is available to rent on demand wherever you rent your movies on demand. But if you don't want to be demanding and you want to support your local video stores, I recommend you do that. If you live in Los Angeles, Vidiot's, Videotech, and Cinephile Video are all great options. Check it out. Blazing Saddles still holds up. It would make a great double bill with the other 1974 Mel Brooks film, Young Frankenstein. All right, and that is going to bring us to our next film, changing gears quite drastically here. We've got Chinatown from 1974. As I mentioned in our opening, this screenplay by Robert Towne is considered by many to be the greatest screenplay ever written. And much like Blazing Saddles, it's an homage to a genre that kind of faded away by the early 70s, noir films. And Robert Towne, he plays with the structure, the character archetypes, and the style of all these noir films to deliver, one of the most gut-wrenching, bleak, and unnervingly honest LA stories of the century. Mm. The movie follows Jake Gittes, played by Jack Nicholson. And he is a private investigator who gets pulled into a very twisted case. It starts out as a simple, I think my husband's cheating on me, case, but it quickly unravels. The person who hires Gittes, Evelyn Mulwray, turns out not to be Evelyn Mulwray at all. It's an imposter. Mr. Mulwray is the head of the Water Commission in Los Angeles in the midst of a disastrous drought. And shortly after Gittes gets involved in the case, Mr. Mulwray is found dead, drowned. Then you get the real Evelyn Mulwray, who's played by Faye Dunaway, and she wants to hire Gittes again to help find her husband's killer. Meanwhile, you got Evelyn's father, Noah Cross, sick son of a bitch, played by John Huston, also tries to hire Jake Gittes to find the supposed person that Mr. Mulwray was having an affair with. It's a lot going on. And with like all these this mystery just becomes so overwhelming, and you find out one answer and then you get two new questions. And as soon as you think you've figured it all out, it changes. And all this neo-noir mystery, it crescendos into one of the most famous, shocking, and upsetting conclusions in film history. Bella, what were your thoughts on Forget It, Jake, it's Chinatown?
This is a masterful film in every sense of the word. It's such an incredible mystery, beautifully shot, phenomenal performances. But I have to be honest, for the first time in a long time, I really struggled to separate the art from the artist here.
Mm-hmm. Roman Polanski, the filmmaker, of course.
Yes, exactly. And this was actually the first Roman Polanski movie I've ever watched. But yeah, I don't know. It was definitely a struggle, especially like this one. I feel like just because there are certain horrific plot points and crimes that we know Roman Polanski himself has done. So it's like makes it, unfortunately, knowing that just makes it kind of difficult to enjoy certain aspects of this movie or just enjoy the movie as a whole for me. But, specifically John Huston's character, Noah Cross, is
Huston.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Thank you. John Huston's character, Noah Cross, is one of the most repulsive, despicable, and terrifying characters I've ever seen on screen. It's a phenomenal performance, and like every word that comes out of his mouth just makes you despise him even more. And for me, that would be amazing to watch if I wasn't kind of like forced to see the filmmaker reflected in this character a little bit. Like, I love a good villain, a despicable villain, you know, one that literally makes you want to reach through the screen and strangle them. But just having all this like background to the filmmaker in the back of my head just kind of sabotaged this film a bit for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just had to get that out because it definitely was played a big role in how I feel towards this movie. But I also I really loved the kind of, like you were saying, homage, like blend of classic noir and then also neo-noir in this film. I feel like, you know, it started off very classical, especially even those opening credits.
Mm-hmm.
It made me feel like I was watching film noir from the 40s. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And then the film gradually evolves into this like dark and sinister modern noir that just gets more and more violent. And then, like you said, that heart-shattering ending rather than, you know, the typical good guys winning stuff, which I did not see coming, and it fucked me up so bad. So yeah, it's such an amazing movie, and I did really enjoy it, and I'm very happy to have seen it.
Yeah, and this is, you know, the early 70s this came out, and the permeating feeling that corruption was, you know, kind of innate. It was heavy, man. You know, the Watergate scandal was well known, you know, at this time and well discussed. And for a while, you know, in 1974, Nixon did step down. But for a while, it seemed like maybe Richard Nixon was going to get away with it. So, you know, this bleak worldview of corruption winning out, I think, is really a sign of the times. And of course, unfortunately, it feels really pertinent every, I don't know, 5 years or so.
Yeah.
When shit seems hopeless, as things just kind of go round and round. But
totally.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I totally empathize with what you're saying, Bella. It is tough to think about this film, you know, with Roman Polanski, because he did exactly what the most despicable, probably one of the most despicable characters ever put on screen.
Yeah.
Ever. And
I would agree with that. Yeah.
He did that in real life. So yeah, for me, it adds even another layer of cringe and uncomfortable viewing to this movie, which is already at that place just because of how heavy it is, you know.
Yeah, it's devastating.
Mm-hmm. It's devastating. That's a great word. And I've seen this movie so many times, and I've read the script, so many times. I read the script like once a year just for, you know, the exercise.
I love it.
But every time I watch it, it's just like, fuck, it just hits you like a goddamn gut punch. That line, "Forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown." It just has become a mantra. You know, it is a line that kind of has gone past cinema quotes and just been like a blanket statement for, you know, being burned or being snubbed by the system. You know, like if you get snubbed or jabbed in the film industry, they say, "Oh, forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown." Just like, let it go, man. It's a weird industry, you know. Or I saw after the recent election we had, I saw a lot of people saying, "Forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown." You know?
I love it.
So yeah, it has obviously stood the test of time and has so many layers and so much to say and is so masterfully executed. Not just by Polanski, but and Robert Towne's screenplay, but really the performances by Jack Nicholson and Faye Dunaway, and as you mentioned, John Huston as well. Like they do some extraordinary work here.
I found these in your backyard in the pond. They belonged to your husband, didn't they? Didn't they?
I don't know. Yes, probably.
Yes, positively. It's where he was drowned.
What?
There's no time to be shocked by the truth. The coroner's report proves that he had salt water in his lungs when he was killed. Just take my word for it, all right? Now, I want to know how it happened, and I want to know why, and I want to know before Escobar gets here, because I don't want to lose my license.
I don't know what you are talking about. This is the craziest, the most insane thing.
Stop it! I'm going to make it easy for you. You were jealous. You had a fight. He fell. He hit his head. It was an accident. But his girl is a witness, so you had to shut her up. You don't have the guts to harm her, but you got the money to keep her mouth shut. Yes or no?
No!
Who is she? And don't give me that crap about your sister because you don't have a sister.
I'll tell you the truth.
Good. What's her name?
Catherine.
Catherine who?
She's my daughter.
I said I want the truth.
She's my sister. She's my daughter. My sister, my daughter.
I said I want the truth.
She's my sister and my daughter.
Yeah. Faye Dunaway for me is like the number one reason to watch this movie. She is enchanting, and that's like I was holding on to every word, every breath, every look. Like she is just such a star in this. And yeah, she'll crush your heart in this movie.
Well, and one of the beautiful things they did with her character was, in most film noir movies, you have, what they call the femme fatale,
right.
Where the female lead in the movie ends up becoming the villain and kind of the mastermind for all the bad stuff that has been going on. And they play with that concept in this movie. They make you think a few times like, oh, she's a femme fatale. She's a femme fatale. She's leading Mr. Giddis down this rabbit hole, and then she's going to cut his Achilles tendon off right when he gets to the finish.
Right.
But then it does something even better where she is actually the heroine of the story and is really the only redeemable character of the whole film.
Yeah.
So they play with the tropes and the archetypes of film noir, turn them on their head and give you something that you hadn't seen before, even though it feels like you've seen it before.
Oh, it's amazing.
All right, I've got a few pieces of Chinatown trivia for us.
Let's go.
At the time that they were filming this, Jack Nicholson, he was in a lover's relationship. He was a boyfriend-girlfriend with one Angelica Houston, daughter of John Huston. She comes to set one day, and it just so happened to be the scene where John Huston and Jack Nicholson are having that meal outside of the orange groves and the farm and stuff. And John Huston pokes and prods Jack Nicholson. I don't want you to screw over my daughter. And he asks, are you fucking my daughter?
Oh my God.
Jack Nicholson gets up all uncomfortable. So any tension that you may sense during that scene, which is certainly palpable, there may be some truth to that tension because Angelica Houston was just on the other side of the camera there.
Oh my God, that is great.
The Los Angeles Lakers proved to be a problem again for Jack Nicholson. We talked about in our Jokers Are Wild episode where Jack Nicholson had to have Laker games off during the Batman production schedule. On this film, he had a little TV, portable TV, where he could watch his Lakers games. And Roman Polanski was not a fan of this and would be super pissed that Jack Nicholson was always trying to watch the Lakers games and not like being fully locked into the character. So one time they had a insane argument in the trailer, and Roman Polanski destroyed Jack Nicholson's television, preventing him from watching Los Angeles Lakers basketball games.
Oh my God. I can't believe he felt so strongly about this. The Lakers, I guess. I don't know. Fair enough.
I empathize. This is one thing where I'm like, hey, he's just like me.
A little diva.
Okay, so Robert Towne, he was originally offered $125,000 to write the screenplay for The Great Gatsby. But Towne, he said, you know what, I'm not going to do that. You want to know why? Because nobody's going to write The Great Gatsby better than F. Scott Fitzgerald. And he was right. So instead of taking $125,000 to write that screenplay, he accepted a mere $25,000 to write his own story, which was Chinatown. So that just showed, it goes to show integrity counts for something. He turned down $100,000 more to write what is now considered the greatest screenplay ever written.
Wow. That is incredible.
Any final thoughts on old Chinatown?
Shout out the score. I'm a big movie score gal, so this was,
super sexy, super jazzy, very much an homage to horn scores of the noir era. It just is really beautiful.
It's like sitting in a smoky bar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you watch this movie, you do want to have a cigarette with you because there is a lot of people smoking cigarettes in this film. So,
and they make it look so classy.
They make it look so good.
It look so classy.
Yeah. Faye Dunaway's like, hey, she looks amazing. Give me a smoke. Give me a smoke, dame. All right, Chinatown. It is available to stream right now on Paramount Plus. I think that's where I watched it. Yeah, Paramount Plus. Available to stream there. Also available to stream there is the lesser-known sequel to Chinatown, The Two Jakes. Directed by Jack Nicholson. And I'm sure that production.
That one?
I haven't actually. I have not. Every time I watch Chinatown, I say, okay, it's time to watch The Two Jakes because I just watched Chinatown. And then I watch something else and then I forget. So maybe now I will watch The Two Jakes. If anybody of our listening audience has seen The Two Jakes, please let us know what you think about it. And please let me know if it is worth watching because it is available also on Paramount Plus. All right, my friends, that is going to take us to a quick break. And during that break, you are going to hear from Gimme 3 producer, LADFF Festival director, and my wife, Sonja Mereu, for a segment that we call Sonja's Movie Minute. Stay tuned for all that and much more here on the Gimme 3 podcast.
Hello, I'm Sonja, and this is my Movie Minute. Last week, I had the extreme pleasure of seeing Martin Scorsese's 1974 film, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, on the big screen at Vidiot's. I had seen Alice when I was about 9 years old because I was completely obsessed with Jodie Foster after seeing Silence of the Lambs, and I sought out as much of her work as I could get my hands on. But it was so much fun to rewatch this film over 30 years later. I can't imagine that I fully appreciated it back then. It's so funny and sweet and inspiring. It's the story of a newly widowed mom, her super smart but rude son, and the people she meets in the Southwest as she learns who she is and who she can be. Ellen Burstyn is absolutely incredible in the film, vulnerable and sad, sexy and self-possessed. I'm obviously not the only one who thought so because she won Best Actress at the Oscars, BAFTAs, and Golden Globes for her performance. Ellen Burstyn is actually the one who picked Scorsese to direct the film. It's been said that Burstyn approached him before the film production began and asked him what he knew about women. He replied, "Nothing, but I'd like to learn." It seems like he learned a lot, and I hope it helped him in his career and his personal life. It's also worth noting that Sandy Weintraub, Marty's girlfriend and collaborator at the time, was a producer on the film. So maybe she also helped with the sensitive and honest portrayal of Alice and the other women. I can't discuss the film without acknowledging the talent and sexiness of the late, great Chris Christopherson, the sheer pleasure of watching a ripple-drinking, shoplifting Jodie Foster, the depth, humor, and beauty of Diane Ladd, the awkward and kooky Valerie Curtin, the precocious and hilarious Alfred Lutter, and the rest of the stacked and perfect cast. Definitely check out Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. It's a gem.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Gimme 3 podcast, a series for cinephiles, episode 50 of the Gimme 3 podcast. If you could believe that or not, it is true. Episode 50, and to celebrate, we are looking back at films from 1974, for it is their 50th anniversary. Before the break, we talked about the comedy classic Blazing Saddles, and then we discussed the neo-noir thriller Chinatown, and now Bella is going to bring us home with a game-changing film in its own right.
Yes, we've got perhaps the scariest indie horror movie of all time with Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Co-written by Hooper and Kim Henkel, the film follows 5 teenagers on a road trip to visit an old family homestead on a sweltering summer day. Jerry, Pam, Kirk, and siblings Sally and Franklin Hardesty are on their way to their grandfather's property, an old farmhouse they used to visit when they were kids. But what they don't know is that strange, sinister things have been happening in this small town. People are going missing, there are rumors of grave robbers, and no one seems to know or even care about what exactly is going on. As the teens revisit their old stomping grounds and venture into nearby, seemingly abandoned properties, what starts as a carefree summer outing quickly turns into a nightmarish descent into chaos, as one by one the group is picked off by Leatherface, a massive masked killer and his family of cannibals. So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre went on to gross over $30 million at the box office, which is a pretty incredible achievement considering it was a true indie production. I guess if you were to adjust for inflation, because it's the 70s, Tobe Hooper initially produced this movie with less than $700,000 as like the basic production budget, which is just pretty crazy to think about. So, you know, you may be wondering why or how this small indie horror movie reached such a massive audience. Well, a lot of credit goes to the genius marketing behind it. So as we kind of talked about with Chinatown, 70s were a very intense time of political and cultural unrest with, you know, Watergate, Nixon administration, all that kind of stuff. Just creating an overwhelming sense of distrust and anxiety, corruption, all the kind of things we talked about in reference to Chinatown as well. And in interviews, Tobe Hooper has since talked about the massive influence that this had on this film, and particularly in the marketing approach as well, because he wanted to tap into this kind of misinformed atmosphere by marketing the film as though it were based on real events. Mm-hmm. So the opening credits feature this title card that reads something along the lines of, "The film you are about to see is true," which is like always kind of bone chilling when you're sitting down to watch a horror movie.
Yeah.
You're like, oh God, here we go. And he credits this as just this idea as a response to the growing distrust between Americans and the government and all that kind of stuff that was going on. And yeah, I mean, on top of that little fun fact, this tiny detail, just like I said, adds such a terrifying layer of realism and authenticity that just really makes this movie even more intense and disturbing. Hooper actually also has a great quote that I wanted to mention where he's talking about how the graphic news coverage at that time also really inspired him to make this movie. He talked about the lack of sentimentality and the brutality of things that were being shown on the news and how this led him to believe that, quote, "man was the real monster here, just wearing a different face. So I put a literal mask on the monster in my film." And I just thought that was really interesting because that mask is also unforgettable.
Yeah.
Is seared into my memory. So yeah, this movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, revolutionized the slasher genre in so many ways as well. It is widely recognized for introducing the use of power tools as weapons, which we've seen in so many movies since then. It makes me think of the Slumber Party Massacre.
Yeah, the driller killer.
Yeah. And it also is credited with establishing kind of the archetype of the massive masked killer within the slasher genre, which obviously we've seen time and time again with Jason and all those guys. So if you love horror or specifically slashers, many thanks to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Nick, what are your thoughts on this movie?
I mean, I think this is the scariest movie I've ever seen. I had to watch this in the afternoon. It's too fucked up for me to watch at night. It more than changed the game of slasher movie. This movie kind of started slashers. Like
right,
horror movies were very different before this movie. They were much more methodical and dealt with adults. You may be saying to yourself, oh, okay, teenagers going to a van and they go into this abandoned house. Yeah, we've seen that before. But why have you seen that before 1,000 times? Because of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This film started those tropes. You kind of talked about that opening title card saying like, okay, this is a true story. And the style of filmmaking that Tobe Hooper, implores on this movie also helps make it feel real. It kind of like is shot, especially in the opening act. It's kind of shot like documentary style. There's all these like small little zooms and sloppy inserts and handheld work. It kind of feels like found footage stuff, so maybe
totally.
So it gets more cinematic as you get into the second and third act, but that the documentary style in the act one really lends itself to make it feel real and set the tone and set the atmosphere. So, I mean, I just think it's a masterpiece in the same way that Chinatown is a masterpiece and makes you feel so disgusted and unnerved. I'd say the same for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre because it is
I 100%
it is
agree.
a masterclass in making you feel like fuck. I want to be doing anything else than watching this movie right now.
Yes, which is so funny because like I watched this movie for the first time last year around Halloween and it made my head explode. Like I was just obsessed with this movie. I agree. I think it's the scariest horror movie I've ever seen in my life. Even 50 years later, like I just, which is amazing. Then I watched it again because they were showing it in October at the New Beverly. And I took my friend Remy Smith, who's been on the podcast because she had never seen it before. And sitting down, I was like, wait, why am I watching this again? Like I was having like butterflies. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this, like almost like a haunted house. I think another reason it is just one of the greatest horror movies I've seen is it evokes the most intense visceral reactions to watching it.
Absolutely.
Like, for example, on top of it just being terrifying and, I recommend watching this movie as loud as you possibly can. I think the sound design is probably the most, like, one of the scariest parts of it. But also this movie has a weird sense of humor to it as well, which I think is necessary. I wouldn't put it in, like, the horror comedy category. I wouldn't go that far. But there are moments where you're like, this is kind of silly.
I've heard that.
Do you not feel that way?
No, fuck no, I don't. Fuck no.
Okay, maybe it's just me.
No,
yeah.
It's not just you because you go see it in a theater and people are laughing their asses off. I'm like, you guys are all sick fucks. And this is what Tobe Hooper is talking about. And now he's gone back after the film, has been around for decades. He's like, oh yeah, it's supposed to be funny. It's like, motherfucker, you weren't saying that when the shit came out.
I don't know, yeah.
And all these people just laughing at this absolute horrific destruction and sick, twisted fucking shit.
Horrible,
it's like, okay, what's scary about this movie is is how scary it is, but also society's reaction to it. I feel is just as scary to me. So no, I don't think it's funny at all. I think it's fucking sick. And I think you're sick, Bella.
I'm sick in the head because that when the cannibals bring their grandpa out, I lose it.
Oh,
I know that's supposed to be terrifying, but
it's horrifying.
It's both. And I think it also, for me at least, a huge part of it is like I'm just almost like needing to laugh because I'm so uncomfortable.
That I get, yeah.
So, obviously there's levels to it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely sick in the head, but some of it is also just I'm terrified. why do I want to watch something that's going to make me feel so uncomfortable? But I think that is, kind of the power of horror movies as well.
It's the power of horror movies. It's the power of movies. I mean, we talked about this also with another 1974 joint, John Cassavetes' A Woman Under the Influence, which is an absolute masterpiece. My favorite film of 1974. Check out Great Mother Characters, our episodes on that, and you're going to hear us discuss A Woman Under the Influence. But that is a movie that is also, I was just like, I do not want to be watching what is happening right now. I want to leave this room, but I cannot leave this room. I'm totally captivated. And
yes.
So there's this Texas Chainsaw Massacre and A Woman Under the Influence. If you want to have the most unnerving night of your life, that's a great double feature.
I was gonna say, if that's your favorite movie, you got to be a little sick in the head too.
That you're fair. On. Okay, fair. Touche.
Yeah, no, those are the two scariest movies of 1974. That's for sure.
The thing that is impressive also about the horror of this movie is this movie feels so viscerally violent, but it's not really, you don't see that much on-screen violence.
Yeah.
So much of the film's violence happens off screen or the characters are blocking it. Sure, there's some blood here and there, mostly of just like knives puncturing skin, like small little cuts, which for me is like, gah, that's the kind of shit I hate. Paper cuts. Yeah. Oh, I freak out.
Oh, yeah.
But like as far as like extreme gore that the genre would, become known for in the late 70s and mostly through the 80s, you don't see that much of it here, which makes the horror that much more impressive because it's what you don't see that is scary. And it's impressive about the way Hooper creates these scenes. He's just creating this manic tension without actually seeing what happens. And
totally agree.
Tobe Hooper was adamant that this movie needed to, be seen by like kids and teenagers because, they would do the word of mouth thing. They would like try and sneak in or buy a ticket, from their older brother or something. And then they'd go tell all the kids at school and stuff, which is like, that's how it works. He needed to get the R rating as opposed to like an X rating. So what he would just, while he was editing, he would constantly be calling the MPAA and be asking them, so I've got this scene where a woman is put on a meat hook. I'm trying to get to the R rating. So not showing the hook piercing her back would probably help, right? Yeah, that'd probably help if we didn't see that. Okay, cool. And then, no blood really would help that also. Yeah, that'd probably help, Mr. Hooper.
That's so good.
So, but I mean, it worked because he got the R rating. I mean, in the 70s, they weren't really, violence was not that big of a thing for the MPAA. They did not give a shit about it, which is like, so it goes to Hooper's theme, They cared more about, we can't show a penis head, but showing a woman get brutalized, that's fine.
That's fine. Kids are tough. Yeah, I would also add that the performances of the cannibal family add so much to it because even though you don't really see what they do with these people and with their victims, just their, like you're saying, kind of like frenetic energy, like manic energy, and the way that they interact with each other is so disturbing to watch because like it's just I'll never forget the first time I watched it. I was like, what the fuck am I watching right now?
Yeah, even their house, it's just like they've got all these random bones hanging on the wall and just slabs of, I don't know if it's skin hanging down on the walls or there's just like random little production design touches that are you just catch a piece of. They never really like put the camera to focus on it, but it's the whole setting. It just feels like you're in a goddamn nightmare.
Yeah. Yes, it totally does. And there's like elements of lore too, where you're like, for me, the second time I was watching this, I was like, what happened to the women in this family? Like, what happened to their moms or grandma?
Mm-hmm.
And like, did they eat them? It's just
that'd be my guess.
yeah. So yeah, there's just so many questions that run through your head as you're like you said, yeah, you really get to know them through the production design and all those creepy factors like that. And it gives me chills just thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. I do want to shout out what I think is the finest performance in the movie, which is Marilyn Burns, who plays Sally,
Yes.
our final girl, the first ever final girl, by the way.
Yeah.
She commits so hard in this movie, and this poor woman, her screams are so blood curling and so authentic. And I mean, shit, if you're the actor, I'd be fucking screaming. I mean, it's just, they've created this scene that is just absolutely horrifying. You've got Leatherface coming in your face with a goddamn chainsaw. You've got this old guy sucking on your finger. Jesus, God almighty.
Horrible.
But my God, she does it all. She does her stunts. She does her screaming, and she does her fighting. And it just, it's incredible.
It's amazing. Yeah, the never-ending shrill scream that will haunt you forever. From our girl Marilyn Burns. I think she's horror's best scream queen. I mean, it'd be ridiculous to give it to anyone else with the amount of screaming she does in this movie. In our last bonus episode, I was talking about an 80s horror movie that had a bunch of different titles. And this one had not like these aren't like the titles that they have all over the world, but it's like titles they were thinking of during development, and they were pretty good. One of them was Saturn in Retrograde, which I love because there's just this random scene where they're talking about zodiacs and horoscopes and all that kind of stuff, astrology in the van, and they're like, you believe this shit?
Right.
Head cheese was another one, which is just like, ugh, I don't know.
Yeah, that one
like
that makes me uncomfortable. I could see head cheese.
Really uncomfortable. Stalking Leatherface, and then just Leatherface, which I think is, I don't know, did they ever make a Leatherface movie?
There have been, Tobe Hooper,
so many.
Tobe Hooper made a sequel to this, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which is much more of a comedy than this one.
I've never seen that one.
Comedy.
Okay,
it's enjoyable. It's not near the masterpiece that this one is, but it's worth watching. There is a movie called Leatherface because there's been a few different remakes and off-brand reboots and all that kind of stuff. So there is a Leatherface movie. There's also Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 3D that I think that came out at one point.
Oh my God, hell no.
Yeah.
I do not want that. Yeah, this movie is, if you're a horror fan and you haven't seen it, you have to watch it. It is absolutely terrifying, but also beautifully shot for a horror movie. Like, so much of it is it's kind of a gorgeous film, which is weird to say because it's so horrific, but like the coloring and the visual, like all of it, it's very aesthetic, if you will. Mm-hmm. You guys can stream it on Peacock, Prime, or rent it on Apple TV. Definitely available at your local video stores, unless someone's renting it out, which is very plausible. But yeah, I'm sure you'll find it there.
It's also, if you go to Shudder or AMC Plus, Joe Bob Briggs does an episode of where he talks about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre while showing the film, and a lot of my anecdotes I got from Joe Bob Briggs. And it is he considers it the greatest movie ever made. So he talks at length about this film. And after the movie's done, he goes on a deep retrospective of Tobe Hooper's career, whom he believes does not get enough credit for this film and for the entirety of his career. So if you want even more info of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, check out Joe Bob Briggs on Shudder and AMC Plus. 50 episodes down, and I don't know, 2 more to go. I'm just kidding. We want to thank you all for sticking with us for 50 episodes, and here's to the next 50. And if we want you to be a part of our next 50, so tell us some themes that you'd like us to talk about. Tell us, some of your favorite movies that you'd like us to talk about. Just let us know what you think of the show. If you have any advice, input, anything you want to discuss with us, there's a few different ways that you can get a hold of us. First of which, you go to our Instagram. Gimme 3 Podcast. That's GIMME, spell out 3 podcast. You can DM us on the old IG. Secondly, and probably even easier, is if you scroll down to our episode description, you're going to find a link that says send us a text message. And you click on that link and it's going to go right into our inbox. You can send us a text message. Again, let us know what you think of these movies. Let us know your favorite movie from 1974. Give us some advice on any themes that you want to see in the future. We'll shout you out if we pick it. And if you have any questions for us, any input for us, we want to hear from our listeners because you are the reason that we have made it to episode 50. So we thank you. We thank you very, very much.
Yes, thank you so much.
Bella, do you want to tell the lovely folks where they can find you on the socials?
Yep, you guys can find me on Instagram at Portrait of a Cinephile or on Letterboxd at Beth Stratus. That's just B and then my last name, F Stratus.
You can find me on Letterboxd at Nicholas Ibarra, on Instagram at Nicholas Ibarra. And I am now on this new thing called Blue Sky. You know what this is, Bella?
I've heard of this.
This is where the skies are blue. Because everybody's leaving Twitter, also known as X, because it's just becoming a meeting ground for incels.
Yeah. So
I'm still on Twitter and X because I have to keep an eye, on them. Just make sure.
Yep. Gotta make sure.
So you can find me on Twitter X at Nicholas P. Ibarra. And the P stands for panicked.
There you go.
You can also find me now on Blue Sky at Nicholas Ibarra. We want to thank you all for listening to the Gimme 3 podcast for this episode and for all 50 episodes. We appreciate y'all, and we will see you at the movies.